I knew that Sean and Ivory had like their own special relationship. They had a connection that I can't really speak to since I am not black and trans. I am not a black trans woman, but immediately I was like, okay, I'm coming over. Are you at home? Not that it matters, but it would have been on the other side of San Francisco. So like immediately I hop on a lift, call a lift, and while I'm in the car, I call my supervisor at the time because this was when I was still working with a bigger corporate company. So I had already had my own business, but I had continued to work for this company until about October, November of this 2023 year. And actually, I talk about a lot of this in the other series, Academics Season 2, but I don't talk about things in this level of detail that I wanted to share for this series that is purely focused on spiritualism and mediumship. So I call my supervisor. I let her know that, you know, Ivory had passed away, so there's there's no point in continuing the hiring process, right? And at this point, I was not told, I was not made aware of the circumstances. And to be honest, it didn't really matter. It was such a shock. All I wanted to do was be with my friend. All I wanted to do was be with Sean. So I get to Sean's place and we are like sitting across from each other, just like in shock. Like, if you want me to be honest, I don't I broke down in tears a little bit later, but I don't even remember us like literally crying together. I know that sounds weird, and that's like what I remember or don't remember, if you will. But I remember at one point Sean like comforting me, and then had kind of mentioned that they had had a little bit of time to kind of sit with the news before they reached out to me, and that they reached out to me so that I wouldn't like open up social media and find out that way. So I really, really appreciated that, even though I had not known Ivory for as long as some of her other friends. So, um, I remember sitting, like I said, across from each other. At one point, I'm like typing up a caption, right? A rest in peace, right? So that took a second. And then all of a sudden, I get the sense, I just get the feeling that Ivory's there, that she's there with us. And I kind of get the feeling that she's in the corner. And I told Sean, I said, Ivory's here. And Sean was like, I don't want to hear that. And it wasn't even necessarily that they didn't believe me. It's that they didn't want to mess with that. If I would venture as far as to say that's a little bit that comes from Sean's like kind of, Christian background. Christian background. Um, but I've led enough ghost tours to know at this point that whereas I'm very intrigued and very curious by the paranormal, and if anything, I need to be better about protecting myself because not all spirits are good, and you do need to be very adamant and very careful. But I have met plenty of people who it's like, again, it's not even a disbelief thing. Sure, there's plenty of those, but it's more a thing of like, I believe it's there. I'm going to stay over here. That's going to stay over there. So that was kind of Sean's attitude. And then I will never forget this, but we're sitting in the living room. Literally half the lights in the room go off and then they blink and then they come back on. Like you could have literally drawn a line in the room with only half of the lights like going on and like just blinking like that. And I remember turning to Sean and saying, I didn't do that. That wasn't me. And I remember Sean kind of giving me this look and saying, like, I told you, like, that's fine. I'm not saying that I don't believe you. I really don't want to do that right now. Again, purely out of respect for Sean, I am in fact in this person's home, right? So that's that. I will say that I felt Ivory's presence. I felt Ivory's presence for about, if you want me to be completely honest, I felt her really close for like almost a year, like maybe 9 months, I want to say, which was wild because like we had just met. It was one of those things where we like kind of hit it off, kind of fast and furious, if you will, but again, friends, right? And so the fact that I felt like I had this attachment to somebody who had crossed over that I didn't necessarily know that well or that for that long, I found it very intriguing, for lack of a better term. But I accept it. I've come to accept it. I've come to realize that, well, one, I'm a huge believer that nothing happens for on accident. Everything happens for a reason. We are given the gift of choice, but I do firmly believe that I was meant to meet Ivory when I did for a specific reason. And I won't talk. There are certain parts of this that I'm leaving out. I'm not going to tell you about the deal that I made with her before she passed away. I'm not going to tell you about anyway. So that was in January. We had a march. We had a rally at the Supreme Court of the United States in March in Washington D.C. that I'll link that video, or maybe can you link? Anyway, I'll see if I can link that. But I talk more about that experience. But Ivory's like, whereas that trip was kind of like optional for me, Ivory's death really made it mandatory for me to go on that trip. And again, I talk about that in another video. It's not the purpose of this video. But as I close out this series for now, this would be the most recent moment in my life that I can recall when when a person who has crossed over has made such a deliberate like attempt to contact me, or where I've really felt their presence. And the last person I felt that with was Dr. Margolin, Dr. Tiffany, who I talked about earlier in the series. But that's it. That's my take, and that's my some of my experiences with spiritualism and mediumship. I want to create a space where people are more comfortable talking about this kind of stuff, because I know that I'm not the only one that has had these experiences. And I might be taking a bit of a leap of faith, right? A step forward in being very open about my experiences. But it is absolutely my hope that it's reciprocated, because I want to hear about other people's. And we are entering a world where our experiences and our perspectives will come more and more relevant, is all I'll say. I firmly believe that. So thank you for making it to the end of this series. Be very, very blessed. I'll see you in another series.